Hi there. I've been reading a lot of evolutionary psychology lately. I've read 4 books recently. I've read some in the past. And I wanted to talk about evolutionary psychology briefly and why I think they do have some points that I agree with, and they do have some points that I have problems with. Now, I'm going to limit my discussion just to one area of research, and that is a researcher named Geoffrey Miller. If you don't know Geoffrey Miller, he's written a lot of literature in evolutionary psychology, and maybe he's most famous for Spent, although he's written a number of other books, which is about how our consumer habits are dictated by our desire to find mates, which he's written a lot about. But I'm going to limit, and he's written something really interesting, which will always be, will be posted in the low bar. It's about how much a woman who's a lap dancer collects is directly proportional to where she is in her ovulation cycle. So if you're interested in that, it'll be in the low bar as a link as well. But I want to limit myself on his views about music, because when I read a lot in one area, I try to find somebody who disagrees to give me more balanced perspective. So yesterday I bought a book of Raymond Tallis's, and the title of the book is Aping Mankind, Neuromania, Darwinitis, and the Misrepresentation of Humanity. And it brought to my mind, because Geoffrey Miller has this idea that music, as a lot of other things in his estimation, serves just as a way to show fitness to a possible mate. That's why music, why we've developed as a species this our great facility, our precocity with music. So that's his theory, and it is criticized by Tallis for a number of reasons. And Tallis also criticizes evolutionary psychologists for asserting that novel writing and all sorts of things are just displays to try to find mates. And Tallis is very critical of that. And on page 303, he begins to talk about Miller's Miller's take on music, and says that he argues that some of our most human mental abilities, art, music, language, kindness, intelligence, and creativity, involved not just for survival, but for reproduction, and that animal bodies and behavior evolve largely as advertisements for their genes. By singing, and possibly, although not in my case, and this is Tallis speaking, a man demonstrates his fitness to a woman. Now, I find that interesting, and I want to talk about the relationship that has bothered me since I was very young and I first saw A Clockwork Orange. Because in that, if you remember, and I'm talking about the novel here, although I think it's touched on, but not as deeply as in the movie. So in the novel, Alex, because he's done some horrific things, unbelievable things, violent things, they try to give him aversion therapy. Now, nowadays, aversion therapy is very much out of vogue, and people use more covert things, like advertisers know what will motivate you, supposedly, and this is certainly according to Miller, to buy things, and it's a subliminal thing based on your psychology and your need to display your reproductive fitness to the opposite sex. Now, the problem that I have had with A Clockwork Orange, and it's something that I think Burgess intended people to think about a lot, is that the doctor who is giving Alex, the main character, of course, in A Clockwork Orange, this aversion therapy, and if you've ever seen that scene, which will also be in the low bar, where, his eyes are propped open. He's been given nausea-inducing drugs, and he is made to watch the most horrific violence in order to make him averse to violence. But the thing the doctor does also is that one of the redeeming things about Alex, in my reading, is that he's not motivated by buying a lot of stuff or getting a lot of money as a result of his violence, which sounds really weird, but in the novel you kind of start associating with the fact that Alex just wants good sound systems. He wants to be able to listen to music, and he particularly likes Beethoven, although he likes a lot of classical music. And the doctor binds violence with his passion for music. And the doctor explains in the novel why he does that. But it seems particularly ruthless to me. And it seems to me that it is one of the best examples of why music, for Alex, one of the redeeming things when I read the novel was his love of music for its own sake. He seemed to love it for its own sake. Not as a display or anything, but just as for its own sake. And I do think there's some subtlety that's totally missing in some evolutionary psychology theory when it wants to make it this broad that music serves only as display for the opposite sex. And those kinds of things really do put me off. And I really do understand what Tallis is saying. I know this might have been slightly boring, but I just was worried and curious. And so all of these will be, if you don't know the scene where Alex is given aversion therapy, it'll be in the low bar. Is it possible for music just to exist for its own sake? If not, why would you think it's just a display to get a mate? And is art, is literature, are all those things displays to get mates, or to at least get sex? Is that what they exist for? Because I'm curious about what you guys think, because I hear a lot of positive things about evolutionary psychology, and I've read some books I was impressed with, but I'm just curious to know if you see the relationship or if you have any misgivings about it. Take care. If you listened this far, thanks for putting up with this ramble. Take care of yourselves. Talk to you later. Bye.